Pastor Plek's podcast. I'm so glad all of you are joining us as we are live. Hey, welcome on whatever platform you're watching on, YouTube, Facebook, or whatever. We're glad you're here, and we wanted to bring you in to the reality of what's going on in Israel. And so, with me in studio, you have the usuals of the Machine Gun Nick, who is a Iraqi Afghanistan war vet, and we have Leah Brown, our political consultant, who always brings us the fresh cutting reality from I don't know, just an aware
the halls
person.
Of Congress.
There you go, the halls of Congress, where she's been. And then I wanted to bring in my neighbor. He has just moved from Israel in July. All right, so you've been here all of 3 months. Or 4 months, 3 months, 3 months or so. And Josh Capone, welcome. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Just welcome. And can you just give us a quick synopsis of what's going on in Israel and how it affects you just on a personal level? And then we're going to just pepper you with lots of questions because we've heard so many things and we don't know what to believe or what's true. And just kind of you can give us more reality.
So, first of all, thanks for inviting me, Chris.
Yeah.
It's a really important subject and it's obviously close to my heart. I'll try to give a synopsis as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit limited with my language, so if I'm
because your first language is Hebrew.
It's Hebrew, yeah. So
you speak perfect.
If I stray away, just correct me. Feel free. I'm
Yeah.
used to it. It's fine. In general, one day, Israeli morning. Actually, I'll start there. I moved into Austin just 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
My entire family is still in Israel. All my friends are there. So we're keeping close communications. Usually, Israel is 8 hours ahead. Mm-hmm. So it's usually we talk when we wake up early morning with the families and stuff. But 10:30 p.m. my time, I'm starting to get messages in the family messaging group.
Right.
Is everybody okay? And I'm like, what's happening? Rockets. And rockets is something that, it's strange to say, but we're kind of used to it.
Wow.
We get rockets from time to time. We'll talk a little bit later about the Iron Dome. And rockets don't really affect you. Oh, they do. But, you're relatively safe. I know that my family is safe when they're sending messages. I know that they're in bomb shelters, so everything's good.
Hold on. So when you say my family's in bomb shelters, that's a casual way of saying it's bad. Tell me, is there a real threat of their house being eliminated, and so they're in a bomb shelter? I mean, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. First of all,
and what is a bomb shelter like?
It's a room surrounded by steel and concrete.
And does everybody have their own personal bomb shelter, or there's a community bomb shelter?
So both, in general, new houses already have them. So we have one room we designated for an office or a children's room, but it's a safe place. Mm-hmm. You can just close a metal door, and you're protected. The window is shielded. You just move a metal bar, so it's a panic room.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're accustomed to that. Most new houses have it. Old houses don't have it, but still, there are many public places to go through. So every, playground kind of has that.
Wait, every playground?
Almost every other playground in Israel has that.
Okay,
yeah.
So forgive us being ignorant Americans, but so you have playgrounds with bomb shelters, and so it's not that, I don't want to say this isn't normal, but the reality of a threat posed to Israel is normal. Why is that?
Well, Israel is in an ongoing conflict from the time it was founded,
1948.
Yeah, 1948.
Before
exactly.
that, too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, when it was founded, war started immediately. So, and ever since then we have a conflict going on. So, it was conflict with different Arab states and the Palestinians, but in general, now it's the majority is the Palestinians and the Hezbollah in the other
Lebanon.
northern border. Now, Israel is a really small country.
Right. Give me
So it's 9 million people, and it's you can drive across. It's less than 300 miles across, south to north, and it's even narrower. So it's long and narrow. So it's 150 miles across.
Wow.
Yeah. If you go like west to south,
East.
east.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So there's not a lot of room. And with that, when somebody's firing, they're hitting something. Right. So where was I? I want to go back.
So you got the note from the family. Hey,
Yeah.
rockets.
Yeah. So we're messaging everybody, and then another family. So usually when they fire, the Israelis developed a defensive system called an Iron Dome.
Yes.
The Iron Dome basically detects a missile and fires a missile on that
Counter
missile.
battery.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's been working, and thank God for that. Because if we didn't have that, we would just get all these rockets hitting civilian population. So because we have that, we know what region. It's very accurate. So you know that it's gonna fire on a specific city.
Excuse me just for 1 second. You said they're hitting civilian populations. They usually target civilian populations?
Well, yeah. So
because in the
we're up-
news, we're like, oh, they usually target military. So you're saying it's normal to be targeted if you're a civilian in Israel?
Absolutely. We're not dealing with freedom fighters or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Hamas is a terror organization, and we're going to talk about
Mm-hmm,
what they did. What they did now was a terror act.
Yeah.
And you can see it all around social media. They're trying to terrorize Israel into demoralizing us. I don't know what the end goal is. It doesn't make sense. I think they just signed their death warrant, but I don't know. That's what they've been doing. It's basically ISIS.
Yeah.
And basically the same.
Okay, so get the text. Rockets. Everyone's freaking out.
Yeah. So, okay. So I know that my parents got, their city was targeted by missiles, so they ran to the shelter, and everybody asked them, they're fine, yeah. And usually, what happens then is you wait a couple of minutes. If nothing happens, you go back out. But then my brother also says, "Sirens here. I'm going to the shelter too."
What part of Israel were they in?
My parents are kind of like at the south. Most of my family is at the center, so they're relatively safe, and thank God for that. But still, there are different regions very close by, so 10 minutes drive. And still, you start seeing a pattern, and then somebody else from the family from a different city tells you they're firing rockets. So I do what I always do when I'm back in Israel. I open the TV and I take a look, because you see all the alerts and all the cities that are being hit. And suddenly you see that everybody is being hit. So 5,000 rockets all at once, all across Israel. So, and it's up until the Tel Aviv area, which is the center. They can't go up north. So there we have a different threat. But this is not something conventional. Usually they fire a lot less, or they fire at a specific region. Usually they target, the south, because it's easier for them. They're really close by.
Right.
So I talked about how Israel is really narrow. At the tip of the south, between the Egypt border and Israel, there is the Gaza Strip, which is where
Super
the Hamas,
narrow. Yeah.
Hamas is the sovereign of that place.
Of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Gaza Strip is governed by a terrorist organization.
Correct.
And has
That's
been
wild.
since 2006.
Yeah.
Like,
correct.
how is that? How can the international community let a terrorist organization rule a certain part? I don't understand.
So this is weird, but they actually won by election.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And but something that's really weird is now that the Palestinians, they have so the Palestinians have two kind of, I'm not sure, islands, let's call it, the Gaza Strip, and there's the West Bank, which is close to Jerusalem, which is to the east of Israel,
Right.
and they're not connected.
Because it's the West Bank of the Jordan River.
Yeah, correct. And the Palestinian Authority used to rule both regions. But then they held the democratic elections because we wanted them to have democratic elections. But because Hamas had a grip on on the south side, they won.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, ever since then, they declare Israel as an enemy. They don't want to make any sort of peace. The only peace Jewish people can make with them is if the Jewish people won't be there.
Don't exist.
Yeah.
All right.
Basically,
Move out.
Yeah. their mission statement is to spread, their religion and to conquer the entirety of Israel.
Right.
And that's Israel has talked about or even looked into giving them their own space, right? Their own,
Yeah,
like they
so-
could be
so-
their own country.
So there was a really painful event. I can't remember the year it was. It was like 10 years ago, something like that, maybe more, where Israel used to occupy Gaza. And we decided to leave and leave it to the Palestinian Authority.
Right.
Once the Hamas won, we kind of decided to backtrack. So we moved a lot of settlements from the border, and we kind of went away.
Yeah, that's like the disengagement in
Exactly.
'05.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was called the Itnatkut.
Yeah.
in
And then
Hebrew.
like 25 Israeli settlements moved out of the Gaza Strip and just basically said, you can have it. We want you to have a democratic election. We're not going to live here. We're not going to engage anymore. That's when Hamas won.
Yeah,
And they've been ruling since.
Yeah, and what we got in return was terror and missiles,
Yeah.
basically, because now they're closer to the border, so they're closer to all the settlements that are legit Israeli settlements
Right.
across the border.
So then now talk to me then about, so the one thing I heard about was this concert, and the part that was really confusing
You're
to
getting
me.
ahead of him.
Sorry.
yeah, no. So going back, sorry,
Yeah.
it's hard to keep track. a
Yeah,
lot of
no,
things,
it's a lot.
and English,
You're doing a great job
yeah,
in English, by the way.
Thank you. So everybody in my family gets bombarded, and I look at the TV, and you see that everybody starting to think that there's a diversion. It was a diversion, and people are saying that they are getting attacked right across, like all the settlements around the border, and nobody responds. Nobody knows what happens. The entire country is basically in a blackout, and everybody's unsure of what's happening. And then you start hearing people calling in, and they called in to the news. You're hearing people live. I'm at my bomb shelter. I removed the handle of the door so they won't be able to go in. There are armed forces here. They're shooting everybody. They're shooting kids. They're shooting the elderly. They're shooting the women. They're just killing us, and I don't know what to do. I think and everybody's sharing live their feelings. I was talking to my father. My father is not here. I don't know what's going on. I think they kidnapped him. And this is what you hear live. Fast forward, you start seeing pickup trucks with armed terrorists in the cities of Israel, in Sderot. Sderot is it's like the second line. Let's call it that. It's not. It's Israel. It's nothing. It's the place where you go shopping.
Right.
And you're seeing them just killing people all across. And in Israel, we have a strong sense of censorship, so they won't publish pictures
Right.
of the dead unless they are confirmed.
Right.
Because the military or the civilian authorities need to verify that somebody's hit, and only then they contact the family first, and only then you can publish pictures. But Hamas, they just filmed the entire thing
And just
So-
put it on the internet and say, go for
so,
it.
so you start seeing things in Telegram, in Instagram, right? You're seeing your loved ones being dragged away and being killed.
I read
live.
they were live streaming murders on the Facebook pages of the relatives of the people they were murdering.
Yeah. And this is just, I don't know how to describe this, but this is our 9/11.
Yeah.
Nothing at that scale ever happened. When all these reports come in, we start to learn that there's a music festival that went on all night, and it was right across. It wasn't that close to the border, but it was
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. And Hamas militants just glided in with weapons and started killing people, raping the women in front of their dead friends.
Well, the reports that they were dressed as Israeli police officers or IDF, is that true?
I did not see any pictures
Okay.
like that, no.
Okay.
But they were in their own
Gear.
military gear.
Yeah. Okay.
These were hideous to watch. We're not still seeing the complete picture because like news reporters can't get into the places where the massacre happened because there's still casualties there, and there's still the military is still there trying to clear the place. Up until this time, there's no full control of the borders of Israel. So there are always like attempts to come in, and I think we're 80 something hours in, and a lot of people, first of all, they don't know what happened to their relatives. So the complete picture is completely unknown. We just learned an hour ago that one of the kibbutz, there's a kibbutz called Be'eri, where the terrorists just came in and they executed the entire kibbutz. There are very,
What's a
very
kibbutz?
few. Kibbutz is like a, it's an old, wow, it's hard to explain. It's like it used to be a commune.
Yeah, a
that would-
community, a
yeah.
neighborhood. A neighborhood?
No, it's not like a neighborhood. They would, it's something that they would work together to build that.
co-op.
Yeah, a co-op.
There
yeah,
we go.
Thank
There
you.
you go.
Thank
Yep.
you for that. Yeah. But in general, they took out 120 dead bodies out of there today.
Where? So I thought Israelis were armed or could be armed. Like a household would have a rifle.
Yeah, you're wrong. No, we all go to the military.
Everybody.
At least everybody except like special populations.
Sure.
So a lot of the Orthodox Jews don't actually serve in the military, and we actually had like huge protests about that in the weeks before this started. Yeah. So
So you served
yeah,
in the IDF
yeah,
at 20? Is that
yeah, 18 till 21.
Okay.
That's
And
3 years.
and so we kind of regard the IDF as pretty much the premier fighting force in the world. And what I mean, I don't want to say like as if you would maybe know, but what do you think could have happened? Was there like how they were not prepared, or what do you think happened?
I think first of all, it was a holiday in Israel. It was a holiday, and it was a Shabbat, which
Right.
is like
Yep.
the Sunday
Yep.
of
Yeah.
Jewish people.
But it's but more so because
But-
like a lot of stuff doesn't work, or it's like turned off intentionally.
So I think no, I don't think it was that. It was a giant catastrophe for
Yeah.
sure, and I'm sure the military. We're gonna have like committees studying
Right,
this and making observations about what happened. You know, what I know is that a lot of systems should have went on automatically and start working, whether
Right.
it's like automatic systems for handling civilian casualties, holding off the attack, air forces, stuff like that. It didn't happen for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Nobody knows why yet. And it seems like Hamas, like all the stars aligned for them. It's hard to say that, but I don't think they ever expected.
This much success.
Yeah.
Huh.
And it's awful that they did get that much success. It's a tragedy. You know, I'm talking like we here as a community, you know, there are a lot of Israelis here in Austin. And
Yeah.
obviously we're talking to each other, and everybody served in the military.
Right.
Nobody understands what happened. And everybody kind of knows, because it's a very small country, everybody knows somebody that was lost here or was injured. So it's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And
Lee, any thoughts from a political landscape of what they're wrestling with?
No, I'll do you one better. How's your wife
Yeah.
handling
Yeah.
the news? Is she pretty distraught? I know you're distraught. I bet from a woman's perspective,
Oh, yeah,
I
it's
haven't
great.
been able to stop crying. I mean, like tearing up thinking about it all weekend. I can't imagine
Yeah.
being in her
it's
shoes.
pretty much the same as you describe it. You know, we're always in contact with the family. It's hard for us because we're far away, and we just moved here. Right?
Yeah.
We're not used to being far away when stuff like that happens. My business partner went to serve in the reserve forces, and he's at the border protecting us. Right? He's in Israel. I'm here.
Oh, wow.
It's a hard feeling.
Yeah, I think you and I are at the soccer game, just watching our sons play soccer, and it's hard to again, as one who's been to war, and then you come to a place that's not war. There's a juxtaposition or like just a conflict of these emotions. Of one, I'm enjoying the life that's right in front of me, but the reality that's there's death and mayhem. Like, how are you processing that?
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. So just for example, today I stumble across. I'm not even trying, but it's all out there. You see a son at our son's age,
Yeah, yeah.
and somebody's son, and he's being handled by terrorists, and he's probably dead or he's in captivity.
Mm.
And you see that image, and you tell yourself, "Wow, I'm so lucky that I'm here, and I can't put myself in the place of that father or that mother."
Yeah.
And again, it's important to say you're seeing this from
Yeah.
Hamas. They're filming this
Yeah.
and they're spreading this,
The hate, the anger. I mean, it's wild to me.
and you still don't have any official authority that can handle or verify that. Right? It's a verification for sure,
Sure.
right? But nobody has answers of where that kid is. Is he alive? What's going on? And parents, I don't even know what to tell you, man. It's hard.
That is wild. I think the thing that's hard for me is I think I've heard when the numbers of it's not just like one or two or 100. It's like we're probably in at least 1,000, right? Of people
There are 900 confirmed kills.
It's 1,000 as of like 30 minutes ago.
So it's and yeah, it goes up by hundreds, and it will keep going up because we still don't know anything. There are I think 2,600 injured.
and also the kidnappings. Can you talk to us
Yeah,
about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's confusing me.
So the party, right?
Yeah.
You saw people being executed at live videos, and you saw the raping, and you see Israeli women on jeeps being led. You're seeing them in Gaza Strip bleeding from their private parts. And still, we're talking hundreds, I think.
I mean, it's just pure evil. And they're abducting them and taking them and doing God knows what.
That's exactly what the observation I'm trying to make. It's not legitimate. It's terror. That's what they're doing.
This isn't even combat. This is a war crime. This is an atrocity.
Yeah.
This is not this isn't war. This is pure terrorism. These people aren't even human beings at this point. They're dogs.
Yeah.
They should be treated like dogs, taken out. Honestly, flatten the Gaza Strip.
I can tell you a lot of us feel that way, but there's two problems there.
Yeah.
First of all, there is a civilian population there.
Mm-hmm.
They're hiding behind it. They're hiding in the schools.
Okay.
They're hiding.
But however, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but this civilian population is militant at best. All right. And anytime you have a guerrilla organization, you have an underground that collects intel for them, an auxiliary that houses equipment for them or makes it so that they get to the destination. We are not talking about people that are just we're innocent civilians. No, they're not.
It's hard. Yeah, it's
Part
hard.
of the Hamas playbook is to utilize
Right.
civilians as their own shields, right? So
Exactly.
that's part of why they've been taking these kidnappings to
Yeah,
bring
and
them back to be like, don't retaliate because we have we have American hostages, we have Russian hostages, we have Israeli hostages, we have the whole gambit, and we're bringing them back to the Gaza Strip to protect us. But another thing that they do is they will operate their their base camps underneath schools or
Exactly.
hospitals,
Ammunition clusters, everything is.
so they hide behind innocent
mosques,
civilian
you know?
populations to try to deter retaliation. But I think right now I just read that the Israeli government is telling everybody in Gaza, get out.
We
go to
always do
Egypt.
that, by the way.
Right,
We always do
right.
it. There's a weird thing that we do, and we do it okay. So Israel is under fire for more than 10 years now. I think it's 15 years by now. And the place where the terrorists came in and they slaughtered people in the street, is constantly being bombarded. And when Israel retaliates, we use air forces
Right.
because we don't want casualties. And there's
It's
a thing we
surgical.
do, which is called knock on the roof, which is basically you go in supersonic speed to make noise. You put out flyers telling the civilian population, we're going to fire here. Don't be here.
Right.
But, the bad thing about it is you tell the terrorists, listen, we're going to fire here. Don't be
Right,
here."
and their leaders leave, or
Yeah.
we did the same thing in Iraq and Afghanistan to populations to try to lessen this
The
hit
casualties. Yeah.
on civilian casualties. Well, it doesn't work in war. unfortunately.
But
And
then, how do you distinguish between
Yeah, it's
you take
morality,
out
the moral
the
guys,
enemy,
and then
and
Yeah.
that
This
is
where-
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that when you're dealing with guerrilla warfare, it's really difficult because you don't have like a nation state, right? That's a sovereign. It's not like you take Hamas is a terrorist organization that blends into the civilian population, and so when you're dealing with that, it becomes impossible. Like, well, if we just get our forces to this location, we're good. No, they blend in. They look like civilians, and then you have no idea, and they're still there. And I think that's the problem, that they don't wear uniforms, right?
It is a problem, and to be honest, I'll tell you the truth. Like in the video I mentioned about the kid, like he was, I think, 9-year-old kid. You see kids get, other kids around them from Gaza throwing stones at him. Still, like, these kids were taught to hate. They're not. I don't see them responsible. I see their parents responsible.
You're
for
never-
That. I
you're
see
ne-
Hamas responsible for that. But I don't think you're gonna change anything by killing them, right?
Right, you're gonna have to love them, and I think that's the Christian response. Just as a I'm a pastor, so it's kind of what I talk about. But like the Christian response is obviously love, but this is where we talked about under the authority of government, like you do have the ability to fight back. But there's just this reality of like looking at all this atrocity and all this darkness, and it's really hard to feel your way through it because there isn't clarity between the guilty and those who are not guilty. And the problem is you've got kids raised up to hate, kind of like you were saying, and like, are you going to eliminate that person as well? I think that's the part that gets confusing.
I don't know. We're a nation, and we're trying to be moral. Like,
Yeah.
we're not. When our soldiers go and
Right.
they kill militants,
Right.
that trying to kill civilian population, we don't go filming that.
Right.
We see human life
As valuable.
as valuable and sacred, and that's what makes it so hard, right? When you're trying to be moral and you're trying to fight a fight. And I think that what keeps us humane and different from these animals.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly right.
we still need to find a way to solve this conflict, right? It's not, and this is the hardest part around. So Hamas is ISIS, right? And let's say we kill every militant out there
Mhm.
and we wipe that organization out. There would just be another one.
Right.
Yeah, but you've gotten rid of that one.
That's true. That's right. And I think it is important to get rid of that one. Not
I got
for
two-
revenge sake, just
2
for
points on this.
Yeah.
Like, there's been in modern history, there's been 2 insurgencies that were defeated, or at least thrown off for a while, right? General Pershing in southern Philippines.
Yeah, I know.
I forget the number, but it was something like 50 to 75. I got the numbers where I don't really. It was like, we'll say it was 50. What were those Muslims down in the southern Philippines?
Yeah, I know
They were
exactly what you're
fighting
talking
them, and they buried like these 50 people with pigs,
Right.
and they held off any resistance for 75 years.
Yeah, I just don't know if that's the way you want to go on that, but I'm with you.
I get you. And then you have South Africa campaign where the British totally took out the Afrikaners, but they were brutal by doing it. Like the brutality was the only way to win the war.
Yeah, I think you might win the war, but you're raising up, like, after that, a mindset, and you have to rule by fear, and boy, that's tough. It may have been effective, but in that situation, I think that's, now we're kind of crossing into different, like, just war theory, but I think that's where it's really challenging to kind of figure out the best way to handle that, and I've studied all those instances as well, and that would be when we were in Iraq, that was like the running joke of, like, if you just cover people with pig's blood, and then they won't do that again, right? Because then they'd be an eternity in hell. And I just don't know if that's the route we're trying to go to kind of be the moral high ground, so to speak. Because I think that's the hard part of it is it's like you want to sort of recognize the humanity of people, and then when we don't, again. But how do you fight? How do you fight fair, right? And that's the trouble.
and
Well,
in
you ask
wars,
a
civilian
Marine.
population gets hit. we all know that no matter how surgically you try to make the strikes, you'll hit civilian
Right.
population. And we know that happened in the past, but we're not going for that with intent. And
Yeah.
I think it's important, for our morals at least.
Right.
But I just want to say one more thing. I have we're gonna win this.
Yeah.
It's clear to me that they're
Well,
gonna pay for
it's
this.
the IDF
and-
for crying out loud. They're the best.
Yeah, and it is one of the best militaries out there. It was caught off guard, but they're back now.
Yeah.
And you can see, and even if the mechanics and something in the chain of command kind of went
Weird.
wrong there
Yeah.
or weird, I don't know. You hear bravery stories of people, who serve in the army, just jump into their trucks and go and
yeah.
fight
Yeah.
with their weapons. So you talked about weapons.
The IDF
Yeah.
has their weapons on them at all time.
Exactly. IDF soldiers have weapons. The rest of the civilian population, you need really strict rules to have a weapon, and it kind of changed in the last year. But
I remember looking at just pictures, and this part I don't know for sure, but like IDF soldiers just hanging out at the beach, but they have their rifle right next to them.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a normal thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, so is that a new thing where, as a Israeli citizen, you don't it's hard to get a weapon, or is that relatively new, or has that been?
No,
like,
it's not. It's always been like that. And usually, if you do have something, it's a handgun, and you'll need a permit to carry it,
Right.
and you need to meet certain criterias to get it, which are not easy. So
Yeah, it's way different. The IDF though they have their rifles with them at all times.
Yeah.
And so it
Right.
may have given the impression that everybody has a rifle with them at all times, but that's definitely not it. It's just the IDF.
But what happens when you draft reserves for the military? You basically draft half of the country.
Okay, there you go.
And then
Yeah.
you have
Okay, so that
right?
does make sense.
And we're all trained
Yeah.
to use
Well,
weapons,
I
so-
mean, I definitely is a showing of why owning your own weapon is so valuable in the United States, and that is something that we wrote into our own Constitution, like as the Second Amendment, not the 10th. You know,
I
and
have to
why.
say that I never looked at that way in Israel, but the recent events could have looked very different
Right.
if people, at least at the settlements across to the border, would at least have
Yeah.
some protection.
Some way to defend themselves.
One of the things that you mentioned, Leah, is like, how did they fund all this? And you had some insight.
Oh, well, I have supernatural insight.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think, you were mentioning
I mean, the
earlier.
speculation is,
Yeah.
that I think Iran has admitted to
Yeah.
funding this.
It is known, like it's not even a secret.
Right.
So we have Hamas, in the south. We have up north. We have the Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon. They basically control Lebanon.
Yeah, so
and-
give me that. Sorry, Hezbollah in the north.
and they're a
Lebanon.
terrorist organization.
Right.
Yeah, same.
And
Yeah.
then Hamas in the south. Are they connected at all, or are they just their own unique?
So they were connected in the past. Hezbollah a couple of years ago tried to kidnap two Israeli soldiers unprovoked, and that kind of sent us to war with that side. And ever since then, there's been quiet on that end. We were really we're still worried. So now they're firing a little bit. Like there's resistance.
Yeah.
Like I think there were 5 militants that came across the border and tried to hit people, but the military got them before they actually did anything. And they did fire some rockets from there. The United States sent out aid in the form of, a warship.
An aircraft carrier.
Yeah. And Biden gave like a great speech, and I think that kind of deterred the entire area from escalating because it felt like there's something happening here, like there's a force to be reckoned with other than Israel
Yeah.
if something happens.
Oh, that's
The
good.
same Biden who gave $6 billion to the Iranians a week before this happened.
That is that is
I guess
true.
so.
You did
Yeah,
that on
that is-
9/11. What are you talking about? That was a month ago.
Oh, a month ago. Well, my bad. Maybe my timeline's
Yeah.
a little
Um,
skewed, but that $6 billion didn't buy 5,000 rockets for.
So I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm not really.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Yeah. No, I'm not like all that into American politics yet, but I can tell you that the speech he gave
Was
gave,
positive.
gave a lot of moral to Israelis.
He called them out as terrorists, which was good. He needed to do that.
That happened. He openly talked about Iran,
Right.
so that's something too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and sending out the forces, I think, like, is not just the talk. You know, you can, if you're sending out aid. in
Yeah, I have
that
a friend of
form-
mine in the Navy heading out that way right now, and so
Yeah.
there's definitely a mobilization of American troops. I mean, there are I think 11 Americans kidnapped, right? So it's not
9.
Dead,
Nine?
I think, not kidnapped.
Oh,
Still-
dead.
They don't know how many
they
were
don't know how
kidnapped.
many were kidnapped yet.
Okay,
And-
so we've
yeah.
got 11 dead or some number dead, and then a bunch kidnapped, and so it's become more of a global fight here that I think that we're
Yeah.
going to be involved with.
There's the potential for it to escalate, but both sides. I mean, people on all sides are saying, if you do this, we're going to strike, and then vice
Yeah.
versa. America is saying, don't you get involved because we're ready. So hopefully, warnings are
Yeah,
taken
That
seriously.
helps for sure.
Well,
And
yeah.
I still don't know how Israel is going to retaliate. I know we haven't started yet. Even
Well,
to
they're
think-
about to bomb Gaza.
Yeah, but bombing Gaza is something, again, when you're knocking on the
and
roof,
an
right,
arm-
telling them, I'm going to
Yeah.
bomb you.
Yeah, I'm gonna bomb you.
We've done it forever. I
Yeah.
think we're heading to something bigger. I think we're going to see
Some ground force.
troops
Yeah, I think so
moving
too.
in. And not just there, I think.
Well, Josh, how can we, I don't even know how we can support or help I mean, we obviously be praying for you, but is there any way we could be serving you in this time? It's neat to have you as a Jewish man here at our church. We're honored for that and grateful for that you be even here. But is there any way we can support you, love you, anything you guys are going through in this time?
I guess what I just want to get out there is that we are seeing, I saw a protest in New York City,
Yeah.
For the freedom fighters of Gaza, and people trying to justify these acts.
This was my next
And-
one.
Wow, that's wild.
And regardless of the conflict or everything, you can't be on that. You can't justify anything that happened during the last couple of days. And I hope I can get this message across to as many people as I can for them to just open their eyes. That's all. And if you can enlighten people on the situation, then I guess I've done my job.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Josh. Any other final thoughts from you guys as we're kind of moving on?
Oh, I wish I could just go enlist in the Israeli army right now.
Machine Gun Nick for the IDF. A couple years past your prime on that one.
I guess
But
so.
hey, listen.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
question for the pastor.
Okay, yeah.
Why do you think that Christians should care about this?
There's many reasons. One, we love Israel. And I do think that God has a specific plan for Israel. I don't think that Israel came out of nowhere for no reason. So I think God's got something specific for them. But this is just beyond loving Israel as a nation. This is just blatant murder. And so that's bad. And so watching, people, this is injustice at a high level. And so when you watch that happen, like just the hundreds and hundreds and the raping and killing is just out in the open wildness. I think it's something we should sort of speak out against and be like, that is just awful. And I understand that there's conflict over land and whatnot, but this is not the way to handle it. And so, I think that we should speak out against that, and that I do think there's a special blessing for those who bless Israel, and I'm totally behind all that we do for them. So I think that's part of it. So I think that it can be challenging to kind of experience all that and not really know the right versus wrong, because there's all more than that. But I think just the way that the international killing out in the open, awful stuff like that, we need to speak out against that.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people who don't know maybe the geopolitics or the history, it's not a clear black and white to them. I mean, that's why you have people in Times Square protesting, Miami,
Yeah.
Dallas. Like, there are protests erupting, and like you said, they're calling them freedom fighters. They're saying free Palestine. and they're trying to make this a nuanced conversation.
I think that I have more problems with the people that are dancing happy,
Right.
to
Yeah.
the fact that kids were being murdered, that people are being murdered, just for spite.
Right.
Yeah, that's
That's wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, people can have problems with the way that Israel was founded in 1948, but it was founded in 1948, and so at some point we've got to kind of come to terms with the reality of the geopolitical nature. And so, I think what's going on is people are like, well, I was forced out of my home, or my grandparents or whatever were forced out of their home. And, at some point, war happens all over the place. And so is the answer then to kind of get back my ancestral lands? Well, then we can say, well, Israel was forced out, 2,500, 2,700 years ago. I think you can kind of go to just about any sort of thing and say, at what point do we go back to history is the right time, or everyone has to realign to that? And so I think that's what's difficult for people. At least in the Palestinian front. And so,
It shouldn't be that hard to call evil evil.
No,
Right.
it shouldn't.
Yeah, but it seems
But
like
it is. And
it
I
is,
think
yeah.
that the more, like I said, nuanced our culture gets, we like to pretend that we're more enlightened and things are more complicated than they seem. And we can stray away. But when evil shows its face, I think it's really important to call evil evil. And one of the most, for me, the simplest way to denote evil versus good is kind of how you value human life.
right.
Which is why I was like somewhat like, at least with my body language, pushing back earlier with you because because there's clear distinction between what Hamas, they're not just killing people, they're not just kidnapping people, they're mutilating bodies.
Yep.
They're smiling while they do it. They're raping women, they're raping babies. I mean, they found, I think this morning, like somewhere around 100 baby bodies that had been completely mutilated and sodomized. Like,
It's wild.
it's evil.
It's
and
evil.
anyone who's not able to say that,
Let's just go into, and I apologize I cut you off, but let's just take a second. How they behead somebody. They don't just cut the head off front to back. They saw it off back to front. And we saw this back in our war, Plek, in Iraq when they caught that truck driver. Them sawing it, back to front so he can feel that pain the whole time he's dying. That's the kind of people.
That's the kind of evil. And remember,
That's
because
evil that
our
we're doing.
battle isn't against flesh and blood. It's against the spiritual forces of darkness. Now, clearly, the spiritual forces of darkness are clearly at work within the flesh and blood. And so that's why I do feel like this is the part where it's imperative for government to act and to intervene. But that's challenging. And I think that's where there's more blood's going to be shed. And at some point, blood is shed to protect the lives of those that are, we've said before, nobody's innocent, but at the same time, this is at a place where it's evil and darkness. And so the role of government is to bring justice and
right?
this
But
fairness.
this isn't the first time in history that a people group has been
Targeted.
genocided,
Yeah.
right? And it's not the first time in history that your people group has been
It happened to
genocided,
us in the past.
right? And
Yeah.
we like to look back on that and say that it was so clear, evil was so clear 70 years ago, right?
Right.
170 years ago. But it wasn't so clear to the people in that time. There
Right.
were people in Times Square that were protesting against
Yeah, for
your
Germany.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, fighting
Back then.
against Germany. Yeah.
Right. And so it's just, I don't know, I think that we can kind of get on our high horse and act like we know better. But then if you look around, you see people that they cannot see evil. They cannot distinguish the morality and governments have to be strategic in how they talk about these things on a war scale. But people don't have to be strategic about how they talk about these things. Like, we can call it evil. And if you're confused about that, then stop being confused. It's very clear. Watch some videos and you will not be confused at all. And I'm just saying this because I have friends who cannot get on the right side of this.
Yeah.
And they think
That's
that
wild.
they're more enlightened and more nuanced, or they say things like, oh, here's a question for the pastor. This is why I hate religion.
Right.
They look at this conflict. Oh, this is why I hate religion. This is the
Yeah.
problem with religion.
And that's why I'd say, like, if there's evil, then there has to be good. Like, right? And so when you look at this, like, well, where is God? Well, God is in the people that are trying to fight and push back against the spiritual forces of darkness, which are then promoting such evil and hellish human performance on the planet. And I think that's the part where, as Christians, we go like when we see all evil, we call it out as evil, and then we call the government to act on that in that aspect for the good of people. So, yeah, I do think that's part of our role, and I'm so grateful to have Josh here. And so, thank you
for giving me, the stage.
my
to talk
man.
my mind.
I appreciate that. Well, looking forward to our next soccer game.
Same here.
And listen, I want you to keep me updated on anything you hear, and we'll bring you back on as time comes on. But hey, listen, thanks for watching. We're talking faith, culture, everything in between. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, get the story out there, as we're just kind of talking about what's awful going on in Israel. Like, I think people need to know about there's real evil out there, and that we need to be praying against that and asking for God to intervene on behalf of Israel. So, hey, thanks for watching. From our house to yours, have an awesome week of worship.